Uhuru, welcome to the breakdown, being brought to you by the African National Women's Organization, ANWO, a mass organization under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. The breakdown is a monthly news analysis and opinion program, as well as a platform for highlighting guests whose issues spotlight the international plight of colonized women struggling against colonialism. My name is Coco Lewis, IEC Economic Development Coordinator of ANWO. I will be one of your co hosts for today's broadcast. I'm joined by a special group of women, the International Executive Committee of ANWO, including President Yejide Oramila, Membership and Recruitment Coordinator Zaid Wendisa, Secretary Nicole Chung, and Director of the Work Council Haddad Longi. Today's breakdown, we'll be talking about 422 tomorrow is Earth Day. The day is used to raise awareness and support for environmental protection. Now, how then does one truly advocate for the protection of Earth and our natural resources under the global colonial capitalist system? We are streaming live on the YouTube channels Burning Spear and the African National Women's Organization, and we're also streaming on Facebook and X. Uhuru comrades, I'm really excited about today's discussion. Welcome to my team.
Uhuru, comrade. So good to have the rest of the IEC on the breakdown. Yes, go ahead, all cheeses. I see it. And we and we want to welcome Nicole Chung to the IEC because we didn't ever have like an official announcement, but like we gonna have one. And Nicole Chung is our newest comrade. Well, she's not new to ANWO. She is new to the IEC and is based in California. But we decided that, why are we, the African National Women's Organization, talking about like Earth Day? And I think part of it is the historical relationship that African women have with the earth, and African people have had with the earth, and just our responsibility to take care of it. And what we're seeing because of the colonial capitalist mode of production is that the destruction of this planet is not as a result of indigenous or African people, going about our lives doing our own thing, but the destruction of our planet has been on the decline as a result of the exploitation and oppression of the world's people, and the demand that colonial capitalism has put on the earth to produce for the people who the oppressor. And that means that when we I think one of the party has a video of us in Sierra Leone where we see trains that come from the mines. The train tracks were built just to go from the mines to the port, and the amount of earth that's being moved through this process of taking the natural resources out of the land and bringing it to the port so that it can go to the ships to go to Europe or wherever else for development. And we see through this process that the land that our people have as a place to live, thrive, and be self-determined, even that is being taken out from underneath us, so that we can even enjoy the benefits, not even just the natural resources that are coming out of the land, but the benefits of just having that land there for whatever it is that we want to do. So us talking about this is really important because it's a really critical issue. We've seen other African women. I forget the sister's name, but there's an African woman who basically single-handedly reforested a particular area of her country by planting trees because of the devastation that colonial capitalism was inflicting on it, and and I think sometimes when we talk about like earth and environment, that it can kind of come out of this political context to say that people are just, human beings are just parasitic. And it's not just that human beings are parasitic, but that there is them, we might be the parasite. We might be on the ground where doing some harmful stuff, but like on the grand scheme of things, that doesn't shape greenhouse emissions. It doesn't change the whole ozone layer. You know what I mean? It doesn't, rob us of oxygen through the destruction of trees and plants. And so that's something that I wanted to bring this our leadership body in to have a discussion and what their thoughts are about, and just giving their own thoughts, but also like what they've read, and also just what your thoughts are about like the environment as we go into tomorrow on Earth Day. Anybody can start.
I'll start. Growing up, I was in high school. I was like the president of the environmental club. I went on these environmental walks. We would just get handed tons and tons of paper propaganda at an environmentalist organization. But as I got older and got more politically educated, especially due to the Hoover movement and the party, I realized that it's not even what we do on an individual basis that's affecting the earth. It's these corporations, these colonial constructs that are really the reason why we have a breakdown in our earth. Is, we take for instance helium. We can stop having balloon releases. We can stop, giving out gifts of balloons, because helium is a non-renewable resource, and it's, we're coming to the end of it. But majority of the helium that is on this earth that's being used is being used by the military, the military to do bombs, helium bombs, other drones and other, NASA is being used by these, large government organizations and, affiliated organizations. Hooroo.
I think you raised a really good point that here we are on the ground, and there are things that we could do, but the bigger picture is above us. Colonialism really has played a humongous part in why our world is the way that it is today. And just being able to talk about it, I think, is the beginning. It's the planting the seed part, because there was a moment in time where I would not have even imagined, I wouldn't have thought colonialism. I wouldn't have thought that there was a bigger picture, even though I think we all know there's a bigger picture, but being able to sit in a discussion today for our, really for our young people and say, like, there is a bigger picture. We need to be talking about it, because as we talk about it, we can come together and provide solutions on what we're going to do about it. So I think it's really important to do our part, but also understand that our part is way bigger than not using balloons at a party.
Yeah, right. It's overturning the colonial capitalist system.
Absolutely.
What are some things, I think, does anybody else want to say something? I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for somebody else to say something. That was really a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
For her. So I I lost connection earlier, so I don't know exactly where we're at. Someone keeps filling in.
I'm just asking your opinion on, what you feel about the colonial capitalist system and how this impact on the environment, and anything that you wanted to raise and experiences and things like that, just to start the conversation of going.
Okay. Well, yeah, kind of similar to Coco. Always had like a special interest of like wanting to take care of the earth and make sure everyone has their individual part, and that we're all stakeholders and like the planet that we live on that we call Earth. But then coming in contact with the Uhuru movement and realizing like the pillage and the rape and death of Africa and her resources, and in the Hero movement we say colonialism caused climate change. There's not all these other, like Coco was saying, about the balloons and helium. Like ultimately, like if you get down to the root cause of things, it's the colonial mode of production that has our planet in such terrible condition. And then I would also like to talk about a little further into our conversation about Apple and Google and Dell and all these, the things in the name of greenwashing and like the genocidal trickle effects, that we see happening globally. So those are some of the things that I just want to talk about. And my name is Zai. I'm over membership and recruitment for ANWO, and I'm happy to be here for this discussion.
Conrad, can you, for those who don't know, can you define greenwashing?
Yeah, so it's like the look at like this, and I use this so light, the revolutionary like thrust of technology and how we could like be like so much forward with our use of technology, but without realizing like the implications and the effects of like for us to have these things in like what we call first world countries, colonizer populations, like what that does to the working class people. So in Africa, we see just like, because women are eating from like the rivers and eating from fish, and their children consequently are coming up with birth defects so that we can have cobalt and coltan and lithium and all the things so our tech can like go. Here in the United States, it takes the form of gentrification and like greenwashing of cities. So like houseless persons can't sleep on sidewalks, or like there's no room for parking or for the working class people because now we have all these bike lanes, and it looks like our like a change that's supposed to be for like the better of our world and humanity, but ultimately it's not for the working class and the oppressed nations of this world. We just continue to suffer, all in the name of like greenwashing.
Contributions.
I love that you brought that up because the bike lanes. I didn't even realize that that was a thing until you just said that. But when I think of like riding my bike to work, I can't do that. I don't live down the street from work. I don't have the economic means to live down the street from work. I didn't even put that together as something that would be greenwashing until right now. And wow, that's deep.
I live here in Washington, and there's so many issues, greenwashing and such. But we also, one of the other things that we can talk about that really touches me is the pesticides in the atmosphere. That is to me a huge issue. Um, our food is poisoned from the word go. We put these pesticides, they spray it on the food, it gets into the dirt. We have cows grazing in the grass. I mean, I think that, they have taken away our ability to even feed ourselves good food. So yeah, I think for me, I mean, I get the other issues, but for me, that is such a huge environmental issue. Um, that I think is directly caused by colonialism.
Yeah, all issues are
Mm.
issues. It's not even just one thing or the other. And I think, yeah, I was most triggered by everything that Comrade Zaid said in terms of like just really looking at the destruction of the earth, like our demand. I don't know if it's a real demand. I don't know if the demand for electronics is the demand that I'm like, I keep phones for like as long as they can work. You know what I mean? So I don't know if there's a real demand for new and exciting technology as long as the old technology continues to work and things like that. But that's what we're thrown into, like the speed at which technology is developing. They make it seem like this is something that being demanded by the masses, but that's just not true. And of course, we want to develop technology that would be helpful, not just so that we can have a better way for the police to track us, right? but, but to improve the conditions on the land and things like that, things that would be helpful for the masses of human and people, not to buy $1,000 cell phone or something like that. So when Saeed was talking about we talk about like the coltan and all these other kinds of things. There's so many different minerals. I'm like, even coming out of Sierra, talking about Sierra Leone because that's where the party has had a huge following and organization for a very long time, and that's a country that I visited. It was the first and only place I visited in Africa, and one of the main is it's not even coltan that's being dug up there. There's something else, I forget the name of it, another mineral, but that is being used to reinforce steel. There's a mineral that they dig out of the ground to use to reinforce steel to make airplanes and other kinds of high density metals that they use in various industries, and that's the primary thing. So we have churches, ministries that go there. They have nice buses. They go into the villages, get the villagers, move them to the mines with these beautiful buses, and then they come back, and the people don't even get paid the money that they were supposed to be getting paid. You know what I mean? So this whole question of like looking at the advancement of technology, development of different materials. It's not tungsten, Sayero. It's something else, and it's the development of these things that's supposed to move society forward, but in fact it really is just solidifying the positioning of the oppressor in our lives, right? Like, and I'm glad you also brought up like some of the ways that I've never heard of the term greenwashing. So this is something that we're all learning today. So just really looking at the way that even people who are talking about like a green new world, but the implications that it has on the African working class and people who are like really the persons who are having to dig up the materials in the earth just to make this green new world, solar panels, how is that being developed? Where is the resources coming from for that thing? So while the green new world is being developed, just like as always, African people are ones that are susceptible to the mineral demands of not even just, I don't know if like we're demanding solar. I think that the solar is I think, I don't know. I feel like these demands that we are now talking about, like solar power, not having fossil fuels as the basis for putting in, things out in the world. I don't know if that's a necessary demand of the people. I think that it's beneficial to have solar power or wind power, but I don't know if that's a demand. But these are the things that we are told that we need, right, to improve the lives of people on the face of the planet. But even solar panels on your house cost you $20,000 just to do that.
That's the problem. That's the problem. Is the profiting. It is the exploitation that's around us. Like, I'm all for science and advancing technology, but it doesn't inherently mean that it has to come off the backs of the people. Like, it can be sourced fairly and constructively. But the problem is that when profit is the motivator, and we live underneath this colonial capitalist system, so it's always like, how can this 1% get the most of not the actual minerals, not because, like they say, like Mark Zuckerberg doesn't. They always talk about these uber rich people try to stay in 1997 Honda Civic and live in modest homes and things like that. But we are all sheeple up underneath this colonial capitalist system where our labor, either directly with our people who are mining for it, the people who are bartering for it, and they only getting a fraction. I think they were talking about one country, they only get 3% of the actual, value that is being retail value that these minerals are being sold for. It's all going to this top 1%. And then what they do is put a social influence, because we know that if you are into the social sciences, Maslow's laws, hierarchy of needs, sociability and social acceptance is a key motivator for us, and a foundational need. So when it comes to that, they put in our minds that we need a new iPhone, or we need a new Samsung phone, or we need a new Google phone every year or every 2 years, so that you have,
Right.
if you buy into the system, into that social pressure, you're buying a new phone, you're buying a new TV, you're buying, and which the does drive the how much we need, because it's not a renewable source. They can't take
Right.
the propane from this and put it in a different phone, or the bauxite. That's right, yeah, Janae. That's the bauxite for the steel. So they can't, once you make that steel beam, you can't go they can't go pick up another, you can't use that steel beam without destructing the housing or the structure that is on. So that's the motivation for it, is the colonial capitalist motivation, and we all are subjects and victims of it. Uhuru, sorry.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I want to give a correct definition of greenwashing before we go into the conversation further. And it's just the process of conveying a false impression or misleading information about how a company's products are environmentally sound. And I just wanted to appreciate Coco for talking about like our consumerism as a people. Like I know oftentimes we think of like, oh, corporation, big bad person, colonizer, big bad person, but like how do we play a part in this? And like looking at, like you're saying, like these companies come out with new technology, it seems like every 6 months, and how you think you need that newest piece of technology every 6 months or every year. I don't know like how the cell phone companies advertise it like every 2 years, and then they, oh, get the newest phone with this like new cheaper rate. But it's like we're in control over what we consume. So for us to look at things that way, as into like how we can, I know, and this in the realm of like green, what they say, minimize our carbon footprint. It's by looking at the things that we consume, and not needing like the hottest and the newest of everything, because it affects the people at the bottom, like Coco was saying, like the children and the mothers and the African families that are having to, mine for these resources. Not to mention, like they're not being compensated for their time, like as if like we're being compensated for our time when we go to work. And then, like I was talking about, some of the defects, some of that, that come as a result of having to provide for your family by digging through the dirt, by drinking polluted water. And then that brings me to talk a little bit about like our water situation here that we have in the United States, looking specifically at Flint, and how a lot of things are downplayed in the African community, whether you're looking here in the United States, or looking abroad. I know abroad is where these people who do this type of work really get their resources and get their funding, because they're helping third world countries. But we have places here in the United States that don't have access to clean drinking water. We saw the the mess that took place in Flint, and how they sent the president in there, to like address or to look at such things, and how Mr. Obama took a little sip of that water and was like, it's not that bad. But it's like the constant. This is a constant, ongoing thing. And what really gets me is how people choose to turn a blind eye to the things that are happening here in the United States, and say, oh, we're going to focus our attention to what's happening in like India loosely, or Africa loosely, or the Philippines loosely, without addressing some of the things that take place here at home.
There was a whole. Go ahead, Nicole.
Oh, I was just going to say that just definitely reminds me of the way that Africans are treated. And the contradictions against our people because it's happening in our communities. It's not a big deal to the United States of America because their children are not being impacted the way that our children are. It reminds me of the fentanyl crisis. We've
Mhm.
been had a problem with drugs. We've been had a war on our people in the 80s. I saw it. I saw it happen to my parents. I saw in my biological parents. I've seen what it does to our communities, and yet here we are in 2024, and we're up in arms because their children are getting a hold of this one particular drug. It's the same thing, I think, with Flint. Like, it's because of we are African people and we are in those spaces and they just don't care. And so it's up to us, again, to be able to just provide this conversation so that we can start to like really break down what the solution to colonialism, colonial
Mhm.
in this colonial atmosphere is. And so I'm glad that you said that, but it just triggered something within me. And I was like, it's because it's us. It's always because it's us. That's why they don't hear what's going on. They don't see or they don't care.
Think about the one the oh, I can't think of the specific name of the pipeline, and that the indigenous people have been organizing and protesting against for decades. And also fracking. They always use black and indigenous people and to be the victims of their colonial aspirations. So when you think about like, oh, instead of going to the Dakota Access Pipeline, so instead of going getting resources from exploiting other people, they're like, wait, let's cut, those people are rebelling, let's try to do it in our backyard when they talk about fracking. And then you have people homes that are being caught on fire or exploding, or you have people being sick. I think about is it New Africa Town, where they have outside of New Africa Town, it's nothing but industrial land. They've built up this industrial, like all around, surrounding the entire African town is plants, chicken plants, all
It's
types.
like paper towel and stuff. 'Cause
Yes. So
the
to the
girl said,
point,
go ahead.
no, go ahead. To the point, yeah. So to the point, that's in African town is in Alabama, southern Alabama, outside of Mobile. So to the point that like 83% of the population there experience some type of cancer within their lifetime. So you have, and that's the way that we can always talk about what's going on in a different country, but that's just how the colonial system oppresses us here in the United States. Even with taking that same situation and looking at it in the education, in the realm of education. So they have the since it's industrial area, mostly industrial area, the way that the system is set up is that since it's a small populace, they get a very little money for their education systems. And then so you have the population of the people in Africa Town are moving out, which is by design. They want the Africans to abandon Africa Town, and so they can go ahead and put more plants over where Africa Town is right now. It not even gentrified. They just want it to be gone so they can use that for more land, because it's right there on the coast. So you have the oil rigs, and we're not even talking about the pollution that they do to the water in that area, coming from the plants and from the oil rigs on the outside as well. So that's how they impact us, here in the states. And we're not making a lot of money working in these plants, or or having to give up our ancestral homes, the only homes that most of us know, since Africa Town is like the only independent African established town in the United States.
I'm looking at because when you said the district, I was reminded of the gas plant district in St. Petersburg, that was one of the central pieces for Achile's electoral campaign, where we're talking about bring reparations to the African community, and the gas plant district was typically where African people lived, and so they moved the gas plant. They basically gentrified that whole entire area, took people's houses, and moved them off of this piece of land, and then built Tropicana Stadium. I was googling just now, and this is how they wrote about it. This is a redevelopment of the historic gas plant district. It says nearly 40 years ago, members of the historic gas plant community were displaced by the ultimately successful pursuit of Major League Baseball and the eventual construction of what is now Tropicana Field. It's so disgusting that they would equate. They basically noted that there's a whole community that they've undermined and moved out of the way for Tropicana Field. But like, oh, it's ultimately successful that we were. And then they go on to talk about like the redevelopment of what they're going to do now to enhance Tropicana Field as opposed to reparations back to the African community, which is what was one of the platforms for the electoral campaign. And as we're talking about like how environmental issues are impacting us here in the United States, gentrification is a huge one. It's a huge one. They use all of these reasons to actually, like here in Washington, D.C. and Southeast Washington, D.C., there was, there's I forget what kind of plant it is, but like, they in the Barry Farm section of the city, that there were whole communities that was wiped out because it developed this base there. And then, there were, they moved people away from Anacostia River. They did this whole thing. They minimized the community. And the people were then compacted into like these smaller sections, which is also an environmental crisis. Like when you squeeze what were, separate houses that were separated into a compacted area, all of the contradictions as a result of colonialism are going to be magnified now that you have people on top of one another. And which is what we've experienced in Southeast Washington, D.C., but also all of Washington, D.C., with the implications of gentrification throughout the city. And what they also try to say then is that they're going to redevelop this area again as a way to improve the conditions, improve the environment, and things like that. But what it really does is continue to further gentrify the community, pushing out the people, putting them in other situations in other parts of the community that may be harmful, packing them up again, just so that they can say it's more progress. And I think when we look at like the environmental impacts, like these are some of the squares that we need to stand on too. Like I'm very concerned about the international environmental crisis, because I think where we see the bulk of the shift of the world is in these places that people tend to think is the plantation. All these land where the peasants still live, where they don't have power, where they have neo-colonial puppets hanging out, being able to facilitate the movement of huge amounts of earth and resources. Those are the things to me that like really have a deep and profound impact on the global situation. But everything that we're talking about, Flint ain't the only place they ain't got. No, do y'all drink tap water? Don't nobody drink tap water. Nobody don't drink tap water. Nobody drink tap water. I don't drink tap water unless I bought that joint, because we don't know what is happening with the water in any specific place that comes to our pipe, right? And so like the environmental question is everywhere, every single where. And in my city, in my town, they have like a homeowner reimbursement program for anybody who wants to do like green saving stuff. But as I said before, if I wanted to put solar panels on my house, which are like huge pieces of equipment that covers your entire roof, and that you'd be paying $20,000 to $30,000 just to get that installed, and then we'll see what it says on electricity and things like that. So I think that when we look at like the environmental question, like it's everywhere. And I'm also reminded of like stories that I saw of African people in the rural South getting cancer because they live next to chicken processing plants, right? So all of the waste and all of the chemicals and everything that was being used to process millions of chickens on a monthly basis was being moved into these, and the absolute disgusting smell that you could imagine from chicken feed and waste and all of that stuff that was being, that itself is like toxic, right? Toxic air that's being created, in addition to all of the chemicals and stuff that's being leached into the land. It's probably still happening in these places that are producing these masses amounts of chicken. We don't need to eat chicken, y'all. We don't need to eat no cow. We don't need to eat none of that stuff. The way that and the thing is, like, when we talk about, like,
It's not even that you can't eat it, it's the way it's being processed.
but hold on, but even the demand for it, like, human beings ain't supposed to eat chicken every single day. You know what I mean? Like, but because the chicken factory, that this is the thing that people have a business for, they're putting it out that you should eat chicken with everything. Every chicken's on every single menu, as opposed to
Milk.
having a more complex diet that includes other sorts of grains, nuts, other kinds of things. And this demand that we got KFC, we have all these chicken places, right? Beef places, and in the history of human beings, like, it was a trick to even have some beef, y'all. Like, you had to go hunt some bison, and you had to break that down. It was a party, you know what I'm saying? You had the skin, you wore that. You was like, it was a party. Everybody from neighboring communities came around. It's like, yes, we about to eat this red meat. That it was like a
Right.
festival of lights. But now you have mad cow disease and all these other kinds of things. You have communities that are being destroyed environmentally, people catching cancer because of all the chemicals that are being used to treat animals, treat plants, and all these kind of things. And they do it on a grander scale in places that they feel like there's no regulation, but because it's home territory, there's a lot more regulation here. But I think that, just talking about those things are really important too, especially as we go into Earth Day, and people to figure out, like, how they should be justice warriors for environments. And it might be just being in your own community and advocating for clean water that comes out of your pipe.
But even take like piggyback, I'm sorry, Nicole. Even piggybacking off that and looking at, the taking, for instance, these chicken and meat processing plants, the immigration issue is in there, because who do you think are working in these plants? Like, I literally got fired from a job because I asked one too many questions with doing what is I'm legally obligated to do under federal regulation, and asking about social security numbers. And they were like, you're not supposed to ask this specific company about social security numbers, And so that's the immigration issue. But it was something else I wanted to say. I'll come back to it. Nicole, comrade.
I wanted to piggyback on the contradiction of chicken, and because I think it's really important. The stuff that they're putting in chickens, how we eat it in our community, the jokes that we have, it for the poor and the working class people, chicken is affordable. It's right there. It's easy. And I think that we have to start having this conversation because that's how our health starts to decline. We start buying what's readily available. And I understand it because that we think that's all we can afford. Coco had mentioned something about water and having bottled water. The poor working class people can't afford to just buy bottled water. We have to do something differently because at the end of the day, the stuff that we're putting in our body is going to inevitably be the breakdown of our body in the long run. Um, I know in San Diego, California, we have a lot of halal places. It's not that much more expensive to go to a halal store. And a halal store is basically where they have their meat from a specific place. They clean their meat. They know where their meat comes from. They don't have any extra additives. Um, we have to start having that conversation as well because that's how Coco, that's how we remain oppressed when we don't know better and we don't do better. I no longer eat chicken, but my family does, and I'm constantly pressing him to go, my husband to go to the Mexican marks because they also clean their meat a certain way. They also raise their meat in their backyards. Like we can get a little creative in the way that we do it, but we have to do it. And those of us that have a little bit more money, we should be the ones that are buying the chickens. We should be the ones that are buying the turkeys. If we have land in the back, we should be the ones that are raising them. We have to get, it's Earth Day, right? So we have to get into the earth. We have to start growing our own food. We have to start there's a well somewhere in San Diego that I just found out about. And I'm about to tell Zaid about it. It's like at a park. It's like a water well. We have to start figuring out places like that. Um, because that's how we start to clean ourselves out from the inside out, if that makes sense. We have
Mhm.
to start to get healthy inside, especially because everything in the outside is just trying to destroy us.
Yeah, and it also benefits the pharmaceutical, companies if we are putting that kind of crap in our system. Um, Marketing, it tells us, you need this protein and you have to, this is what you're supposed to eat, but we fail to understand that we're eating antibiotics and our children at that point become resistant to it. I mean, it's all a part of the program. It's a vicious cycle.
Absolutely.
Oh, I definitely unite. I mean, we're seeing, increases in, conditions and diseases and disorders that didn't exist before, or did existed in a molecular scale. Take, for instance, celiac disease. Celiac disease really used to only impact about 1% of the population. And now, I think like 10 years back, it was like 3% of the population. And really, if you do your research into food science, if you have the time and you do your research in food sciences, you learn that it's really the genetic modifications of the foods to make them more hardier. What we having diseases from or having reproductive issues, where we eating fruit that can't reproduce because it doesn't have any seeds. Or we eating this, we have a problem with weight gain here, and larger bodies, and systems here in the States. And that you can really connect that to the wheat we use, how it's used to produce. If you're going to alter the food to make the food more abundant, like make it more of it, it's definitely going to come back to, is like we're eating that, the same chemicals that they put into that, we're eating that. So of course are we going to have more gastrointestinal disorders and diseases, skin diseases to allergies. And eczema is something that has also increased over the last 50 years as well, as food has developed. We know that it's not developed. What I definitely agree with Nicole, we should go to a more primitive view of how we treat our animals if we're going to eat them, and how we treat our foods if we're going to eat those too. We need to grow our own food. That should be something that we should do. If I grow some wheat, Zaid can grow some corn, Yesterday can grow some greens, and we got a whole thing going on. Nicole got chickens, Nicole had chickens in her backyard. We got eggs, and, subsequently, chickens, because I used to be a vegan, so I watched all this vegan stuff where it used to take 3 years before for a chicken to get matured enough for us to eat the meat. Now it's like 72 days. So just thinking about that, like what are they putting in these chickens? They're, the chicken is much bigger, the beef is much bigger. And even when you go to the grocery store, you can't buy every part of the cow. They only have the parts of the animal that they see as profitable there. So what are they doing with the rest of it? You can't. There's no old school butchers anymore.
Right. And I just want to plug in something called a hydroponic system. You can get it on Amazon. It's like sometimes between $20 and $60, but it will allow you to grow in your apartment. It comes with like a light, and it has like water that you put inside of it. And I think sometimes we talk about the problem, but we do not give our people like a way to do it. So there's a system where you could grow in small spaces. And
Mm-hmm.
I made some bok choy, which is like a lettuce. It took like a week to sprout up. And
Mm-hmm.
watching it sprout up, I was amazed. And I don't have a green thumb. Like, I just want y'all to know I'm really learning. You don't have to have a green thumb. And so there are ways that our people can have the affordability to do some things on our own, even though it sometimes seems like there's not.
Yeah, but a lot of us don't have the ability to do that in our community. A lot of our community, they don't have the money to buy that, so they have no choice but to eat what is available, what is readily available in their community.
Yeah.
I think that's also something that we should explore because, I mean, Comrade Nicole talks about the hydroponic system, and we also recommend that you buy it from other places other than Amazon. Because Bezos, but there's been like grassroots gardeners who say you can take anything and hook it up to anything that you have around your house. Like I see Carmen has like a little pot behind her with the drum. You could turn that drum upside down, throw some dirt in there, and throw some seeds in there. It might take longer than a hydroponic machine or a growing system, but it's there. But I think that when we I don't at the risk of us sounding like the hooka booka naturalist that might be like, there's so many things that's out here that these people are trying to kill us, which is true. Which is true because at the risk of sounding like who I'm talking, the
Not a
people
lot.
I'm talking about. Yeah, girl, health is wealth, and you got to get yourself together. Yes, at the risk of sounding like that, which I think we could all unite with people who sound like that, right?
Yeah.
Because we recognize the fact
It's
that
so safe.
them Africans want us to be healthy, and they know with all the things that's happening around us that's making us sick. um, I also want to talk about like solutions too, because we know what capitalist colonialism is doing into the environment, and there's so many different people who are engaged in active stuff. I'm not sure, like Comrade Coco had mentioned earlier, the people who are the Standing Rock Native people who were standing against the Dakota Access Pipeline and the protest that was like on, and probably still is ongoing. It was just hot and topic in the trends, and everybody was going up to Canada and to participate in the pipeline protest. And there are so many different things there. I was Googling, y'all. I'll be Googling when I'm during this process. And there's like African women in Congo who are reforesting the rainforest, which is the second largest rainforest in the world. And they said by 80 years, it might be completely deforested because and I must imagine this, right? Like, imagine this. Like, when I talk about, yes, everything that we just talked about just now, but when we talk about the magnitude at which colonial capitalism is sweeping through places like our African continent, South America, the Southeast Asia, with all of these sweeping destructive sort of practices. I mean, it's crazy. The second largest I think the third one is in Southeast Asia. So like all the hotspots, right? Like the second largest rainforest might be in 80 years destroyed if we don't do anything. So it's like a group of African women, more than a group, like 500 or so African women who dedicated themselves to reforesting the thing. But I hate the fact that we have to have 500 people that's reforesting something when the people who are cutting down the trees at the unprecedented rate is what the contradiction is. It's great that you have all, like, that's the thing too, is like the savior is like environmental capitalism that comes in with solutions to a problem that shouldn't fucking exist in the first place, right? So here we have people who are cutting down the question is like, how do you stop the trees from being cut down in the first place? As opposed to, let's fund these African women who are the saviors of the Congo with seeds and stuff so that they can go out and reforest the Congo, the Congo rainforest, when the fact is that the problem is not the fact that deforesting didn't just happen as a pop of the light. Somebody did it.
Right. It's strategic in the first place.
Somebody done did it. Somebody done cut down the trees and, all these other kind of things. And when we look at even those environmental issues, like when we look at what's happening in Africa, in Haiti, even
Haiti.
it's all environmental stuff tied to it.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
down the line, it's access to resources, access to land, access to people, and so all of the crises that are happening really are environmental crises. These are environmental crises that are being triggered because people want access to the resources, and in order to get those access to those resources, they have to create crises. People are trying to get out of a place that they've been for 100 years or more, and because they've been the custodians of the land, and now you have created a crisis where you kind of move millions of people in a short amount of time to get access to that. The same can be said here in the United States, where you have people in communities who they need to access to the land and the resources, and so they create these gentrification projects that push people off the land in order to get access to the resources, a part of the city that they want and they feel like is up and coming and can produce millions of dollars for the city, as opposed to actually trying to house people. And when you look at all the homeless people that are here in Washington, D.C., the housing crisis that are here, and I'm sure
It's
if you
enough
look at
homes in this country to house every single homeless person individually. Not
yes,
even looking at them as a family, family structure, to individually, we have more abandoned homes or vacant homes. So, such and such has a second or third home that they never go to. They send their people there to clean it up and turn the power on every day. But that house is remaining vacant. That it could be a home to a family, or here in Cleveland, what they're doing, are knocking down these old historic homes that they kind of force the Black people out of, in the areas that are traditionally Black owned. They're knocking down 2 and 3 homes
hmm
to build one home for
but
some.
they have people like everybody knows about LA, that there's like homeless encampments everywhere throughout the city. Like it's not
Yeah.
you know and in Washington DC, like there's parks that are filled with homeless people, and people who are not technically homeless, right, but who are very housing insufficient in between shelters and in the shelter system. It's crazy because people who have jobs actually are in shelters
Yeah.
because
Because they
they
can't
can't
afford
afford
it.
Right. But
That's
here in
another way that
DC,
they use
we
to
have,
oppress us. Go ahead, Hadar.
no, I was just saying, we have government buildings that can be renovated and nobody's there. These buildings have been empty for 20 years and we still have a huge homeless crisis. It's amazing. We could house all these homeless people in DC.
Because they haven't figured
All
out
they
how
have
to
to do
profit
is
from them.
renovate these buildings and they do it. They're
Okay,
sitting here empty,
how
but they're
can
sitting
we
there empty.
how can we as African revolutionaries do something about it? Or
I
what can we facilitate, that can help? I think having a program like this is one, but like obviously we need more than just this, right? I know it's a tough question because there's so many issues.
I think the all African one organization fundamentally is organizing, being join an organization, that
We
are
can show
we,
up.
we have to abandon our society pushes strategically individualism, making sure that I get enough money or I hustle for a large scale. But really, we need organization. We need to come together as a people. Our people, we existed and thrived through the slave trade, through slavery, through the Jim Crow era, and all the subsequent eras, even the civil rights era, as organizing and being a collective of people. Like we have to ultimately overturn this colonial system, because if we don't, we're going to stay victims, we're going to stay oppressed. But organization to me is number one. And then outside of that, we have to really we have to revisit the old skills. We have to abandon the idea of being subjects of this colonial system by taking our power back, taking our resources back, and getting back into the dirt and keeping the sciences. Like we can have, I'm into big dystopian fiction, so we can have a science world. It's called agro technology, agri science, but it needs to be restructured so that it's fair, a more socialist, setup will, benefit us all because we know that our basal needs are taken care of without sacrificing in, our personal motivations. Oh, that's kind of me just saying why I joined the Hoover movement right there.
Uh, I would say it's imperative for us to go into these spaces and revolutionize these spaces. Just with coming out of in November the No to APEC convention, and just looking at these other nations are experiencing the very same things that Africa has experienced because it's colonization. This is nothing new. But for us to be able to go on those spaces and call it out for what it is and provide the way forward, like Coco was saying, get involved in organization, revolutionary organization at that. And then I think, for the lawsuit that was just dismissed in March from the former miners
Hmm.
that was wanting to hold like Apple and Google and all these like huge tech companies responsible for like forced labor and how it was just dismissed and like, the courts dismissed it. Like this is the colonial mode of production that the party talks about that has to be disrupted.
Right.
We like we utilize these things. I have a Dell laptop. Like we use these products, and there has to be like a more like there has to be another way that we can hit them to where like it rocks the boat. And what we're doing right now is not enough because those former miners that are saying like, hey, like this law that is supposed to work for us, like this constitution, these things that the UN says like there's basic human rights and needs, and these systems are not working for us. So they were never meant to work for us. So we need to provide the people with another solution, which is revolution. And if we can find a way to support these people whose case was just dismissed, find a way. And there's so many things that are going on in the world right now, and there's so many cases, including like the Uhuru 3 case, and so many things that are going on, but it could all be tied back to one thing, and that one thing is colonialism. So,
I also want
Yeah.
to highlight at All African Development Empowerment Project and what DC and her organizations are doing with buying up St. Louis for the people. Having practical programs to support our people that's creating that dual and contending power. So until we able to get official power, we gonna come in here and do what we can to help our people through private. Yeah, All African People's Development Power Private Project. Yeah, I'll add that. um, we just definitely need to, organize and have solidarity, as Zai said, solidarity with other organizations because their fight is our fight as well. All indigenous people and oppressed people, we need to come together and because we outnumber the 1%, and then their petty bourgeoisie, lapdogs. We outnumber them, and we have the people. All power to the people. We have the power.
I
I just
think that
want to
you
make
made,
sure. Go
oh,
ahead,
go ahead.
Nicole.
I think that you made such a good point, Coco and Saeed. We do have power, and we as a people have to step aside and step our fear to the side. I think a lot of us inevitably do not trust in the unknown and do not trust in what's happened when we organized before, but we are a new generation and there is power in this generation, as was there power in the generations that came before us. But I think that we're in a very unique time where we do things just slightly different. And in that difference, we really can cause for change. Economics dictates politics. And I think that if we choose to put our economics in the same place as a people, we will really stump on the colonizers like worth, because at the end of the day, it's financial. That piece is financial. And if we take away their money, then we take away their power.
we do have to find a common goal to take away their money, because let me tell you how these boycotts don't work. Let me tell you how these folks be like, girl, that chicken was good yesterday, or, it's so convenient to shop at this place, or things like that. And I had asked the question in chat about how does convenience play a role in us really complying with what, corporations are wanting us to do anyway. If you don't have to go out and hunt for your meat and all you gotta do is go to the market to get it, then that creates, and then you have a higher demand, because when you forgot how to hunt, now you know that the only place to get your meat is at the market, and then but the market is running low on the thing, and then now we have these factories that pop up that produce millions of chickens and meat for you. So this shifts, and so I'm trying to understand like how convenience, right? And I'm saying that for an individual level. I'm not talking about like, colonial capitalist corporations that have billions of dollars and run through the world. But I'm thinking like after, like, people have the power to shift, and I think we have to find our, and we saw that during COVID, right? Like there had to be like this global catastrophe that was happening in order for people to be like, okay, we got to do this and got to do this. And people starting to work together in different ways. And people don't recognize that colonialism is imperialism is in crisis, and is causing these things to happen to us on a daily basis that require us to do a massive shift away from destructive practices. And I think what Comrade Zaid mentioned in terms of organization, you don't realize that you have to do these things until you join an organization that's doing them things. Like this is a primary responsibility. Organizations will help you understand like what's going to happen, what's the result of it, how they're going to fight back, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, even joining these organizations, we have to join an organization that's going to say, yes, all of these things are happening, and unless we're gonna run around with our heads with like a chicken with their heads cut off. I'm thinking about the chicken factories. That that we have to deal with the fundamental question, and so that really is a being a part of organization is talking about overturning the relationship of power. Because if you just fighting to stop a pipeline, this place is a pipeline that's going to be developed over here. There's going to be a chicken factory that's shut down, but there's 20 to 100 more chicken factories in rural communities in this place. So really what we're talking about in terms of shifting the way that environment is benefiting us really means a radical transformation of society. That requires a radical transformation of society. And a lot of people are engaged in protests that participate in some way, shape, or form in getting us closer to that understanding. But ultimately, like, we got to fight for freedom. We got to fight to have the relationships of power change from one that's built on exploitation and oppression to one that's about liberating the people and for the people. And if we're not engaged in that kind of stuff, then, it's going to be, if we go to the lawmakers in order for them to decide whether or not something's going to become law, like Zaid just mentioned, with the minors or this and that, like, it's like, oh, we're going to change policy, and the policy could be changed again in the next year, depending on who's voted in. And even then, who's voted in, because anyways, like, there's so many unknowns with going to your oppressor to change something, as opposed to really believing in yourself that you have the power to change something. And that requires the masses to like really walk in, step into our power, and say that we can shift and we can transform society so that it's doing what it is that we need it to do in order for us to be successful human beings.
And there's things that we can practically do as, individuals. We can go ahead and, like you said, diversify our diets. We have to, and I think all of that comes from actually political education. And, we have to educate each other. Like, each one teach one is an African American proverb, not an African proverb, it's an African American proverb, because that's something that we actually had to do fundamentally as a people in order to exist since we got off this boat. We had, you know how to do something. We do have to go back to being, I think personally, you're seeing this almost agricultural revolution going on within the Black community, with more people wanting to own land and do homesteading, and creating these compounds where we are divorcing ourselves from the corporate structure. Because think about, and we could do these within urban areas if we are organized and unite. We need community gardens, because you can be living in a food desert. But they just knocked down Miss Rita's house, because she died 10 years ago, and the city didn't, water main bust or whatever. Her land is vacant. Let's see what we can do to organize to attain that land as a community, and create community gardens on that land. It's things that we can do on a fundamental basis. And
Or even buy Miss Rita's house. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Let's get to like the community instead of
well, you know
making
what
that.
they do, right? They sell it to their friends. Like when they take, the bank will take their home, sell it to their
I'm
friends,
saying
and
before
the
it gets to the
friends can
point
own
where
it.
the bank takes the home, if I mean these are community members, right? Like at the
Yeah,
point that we know, and if we, I mean collectively, one person might not be able to buy Miss Rita's home. That's a half of that.
right.
When she bought it, it was $25,000, and now it's worth a half a million. But people in the community could be like, "Yo, let's band together and let's put something on it, and let's get this house together as a community project, as a way to keep, to do something." And I
Mhm.
think we have to start thinking like that. And it becomes hard because as individuals, you be like, "Oh, that's a house down there, I want to buy it." And it's hard, like, also to come to your community, right? Like, you
Right.
think we should buy this house together, or if you don't know them and you don't, like, this is like going into a project with people who you might not like eventually. But I think, before Miss Rita's house becomes blighted, you know, because her family can't afford to take it over or anything like that, the house might be falling into foreclosure. I think that we have to be tuned in. As difficult as that may be for me as an introvert, I know it's hard to tell that I'm introverted, but as difficult as that might be, tuned in, locked into the community and things like that. So we gonna pause this for a second while Comrade Coco. We're gonna turn our cameras off. Comrade Coco's gonna get ready to give us our announcements, and then we're gonna go into some of the comments that came from Sayiro. So we went on that too. And
So we are on
yeah.
our way to the. Okay. Let's everybody hop out of here real quick. All right. So we're on our way. This has been a very dynamic discussion. I am so glad to, like, we have these conversations as an IAC, and our meetings, or, on, our WhatsApp or whatever. But it's great to bring these types of conversation to the forefront. So we're on our way to the Q&A portion. If you have a question or have a comment, make sure you put your name, your location, then your question. But before we go into that, we're going to start with some announcements. Let me just pop it up here. All right. So if you enjoy this conversation and what we've been talking about, and you want to be more involved with ANWO, and which is the African National Women's Organization, we are the only anti-colonial, anti-imperialist, revolutionary organization specifically for Black women. We have members in Africa, Europe, Latin America, and all around the United States. ANWO is leading on everyday issues concerning African women. We're not just on the internet. We are all on the ground in our communities, organizing for African liberation. Join the International Collective of African Women building in the revolutionary capacity for African women. To learn more about membership, to join, visit anwoohuru.org/join. All right. And show your material solidarity of the work of the African National Women's Organization. We have big things planned this year. We're working on the international headquarters for African women, organizing the One Africa, One Nation flea and farmers market in St. Louis, Missouri to support African economic development. And we have other events all over the country. ANWO is an organization of the poor and working class. So we need your support to make these projects happen. If you can't become a member, consider becoming a sustaining donor. Like you can visit us at anwoohuru.org/donate. If you can also make a one-time donation as well on the website. We used to have a cash app, colonial system. They robbed us of our cash app, saying, we're not a we're not a approved organization. Also, wear your politics with ANWO. I don't have any ANWO gear on right now, which is odd. ANWO shop features t-shirts, sweatshirts, travel bags, mugs, hoodies, and even socks. Profits from the merch sales support the campaigns of ANWO, including Arrest CPS and our Work Council. Become a decolonizer and support ANWO Economic Development Project, Decolonize Hair and Body. Decolonize Hair and Body are natural personal care products that highlight ingredients and traditional care practices used by indigenous people all around the world. In addition to featuring images and quotes of African revolutionaries, they are good. I have my Kapawasu and Netto itch relief salve right here on my desk that I use as like a lip balm. And if you see me pumping this is our solution here. So from butters and conditioners to oils, Decolonize has you covered head to toe. Make your next purchase of skincare products from us at decolonize.com. And if you're in the DC metro area, you can purchase in person. Visit decolonize.com to find out more. Hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa. The trial date has been set and the time is now to support the Uhuru 3 in our fight against the U.S. indictments. Defend the African freedom struggle, defend African liberation struggle, defend the Uhuru movement. To find out how you can support the Uhuru 3, visit handsoffuhuru.org. Also,
can I say something? Can you go back to the hands off Uhuru?
sure.
Yeah. So thank you, comrade. Professional. Yeah, I just want to emphasize the magnitude of supporting and showing your solidarity for the Uhuru 3. This is we've started an anti-colonial free speech movement because the colonizer determines what is law, right? And underneath their law, they say that we have the First Amendment right to free speech. And what they're charging the Uhuru 3 with was making speech action. Or they're saying that our speech was just as bad as doing an actual action to harm people, but not people, the United States government. And so what we're fighting against is the U.S. government. We putting them on trial. What we're fighting against is to protect that free speech piece, not only for ourselves, but for other people who are fighting against injustices, who are raising the contradictions that are being experienced by people in this country and beyond. And I think it's really important that the United States government, on the one hand, is going around the world saying that it has all these benefits, for people in their country, and then they're targeting African people, typically people who have been historically oppressed in this country on so many different levels. Everybody knows, and they're saying that the stuff that we were talking about, that we got these ideas from Russians, is a real amazing scapegoat. It's ridiculous. And so what we're saying for people is not just to look at this hands off Uhuru, drop the charges thing, is to really look at it as something that's going to impact you and why you need to be involved and why you should care about this. And it's really important for us to spread the word far and wide. So it's not just about our chairman, even though the chairman has been one of the valiant protesters for African people for over 50 years. It's about our ability as organizers, as revolutionaries, to say what was on our mind without being targeted by the state, even though they're going to target us in some other kind of way. But this is a direct way for them to undermine, the First Amendment right to free speech. So I just want to say, go to handsoffohuru.org and sign up for all of the things, go to the events. And when we call on you to take action in these streets, take action in these streets.
It's going to be this is a landmark case. It's going to dictate how free speech is going to be able to be weaponized against all of us, everyone that's in some that may not align to the system. So it's very important that everyone, unites with Hands Off Uhuru campaign and the overturning the indictments against Penny Hess, Chairman O'Malley, Yeshatella, and Jesse Neville. So if you enjoyed today's program and would like to help us produce shows in 2024, volunteer with us. ANWO is always looking for producers, interpreters, and chat moderators for future broadcasts. If interested, email us at info@anwouhuru.org if you'd like to share your skills. Harriet's Daughters Book Club is a monthly book club and study group, a virtual discussion centered around African liberation related literature. For the month of May, we will be finishing our discussion on the dynamic book, The War Before, the true story of becoming a Black Panther, keeping the faith in prison, and fighting for those left behind by Safia Bakari. And our May book of the month is Women's Liberation and the African Freedom Struggle by Thomas Sankara. Next discussion will be on May 26, 2024 at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 noon Pacific Standard Time. Visit anwouhuru.org/events to stay up to date with all the upcoming international, national, regional, and local events and programs. And lastly here, and most impactfully, one of the most impactful events here is the Black Mothers March on the White House. Another Black child was kidnapped today. And as one of the organizers of the Black Mothers March on the White House, we are calling for Black community control of our children. The Black Mothers March on the White House is a coalition of Black-led organizations that have been involved in the struggle to rescue our children from the custody of the state. Join ANWO and other impactful Black-led organizations for a dynamic weekend of events exposing and standing against the colonial family regulation in the form of so-called child protective services. The weekend of May 10th through the 12th, visit blackmothersmarch.com for more information and to register. Uhuru, let me bring my comrades back up. And there's some questions in here. Well, not questions. I see some comments here.
Yeah, so our comrade
Sayero always in. Sayero be on every live. And I really appreciate it and engaging. And, we should all make sure that we are engaging with any capacity of political education. You should never feel like we're just talking to you. This is a dialogue. This is a conversation, because that's how you refine your political astuteness.
Sayero is on Facebook, and Sayero, I believe, is based, I forget what state that you're in, Sayero. So if you can say what that is, that would be helpful. And I think we were talking about community togetherness and creating sort of solutions for ourselves. And the question is that like taking a plan to the planning commission or to the land bank with the plan of redevelopment on a property for the purposes you just presented? I think we kind of talked about that as one of the last things that we left off with. Um, I think that would be helpful if the planning commission was a revolutionary planning commission and they'd be like, yeah, that's a great idea. You should definitely own this land and do exactly that with it. Because I would imagine that anybody who's coming to the land bank or land commission is just like, yeah, I want to create a community housing, and this is going to help with the people in our areas who are housing deficient. And they're just like, yeah, how does that, that would be great if they'd be like, yeah, that's a great idea. But I don't know what would that. I think Zayi, you were talking about it. I think so. You were like talking about like coming together anyway. So like yeah, just like I don't know if it's like that. I think that if we can bring it to the land commission, but sometimes you just gotta force the hand. Like in Washington D.C. when we were guerrilla gardening in the Ivy City section of Washington D.C. where there was no development happening. There was maybe like 10 buildings still standing in a forest block radius that had empty lots, and that could have housed maybe 40 buildings. We were just like, we're gonna go ahead and just make a garden right here. We didn't ask nobody. We were just like, this is the garden area. We did raised beds and all of that stuff. And what happened was that the mayor was just like, oh, we want to he was like calling us down to the commission to have a meeting about the space. And we were just like, nobody's doing anything with this space. And he calms down. Then he was just like, yeah, this is great. This is great. But we want the mayor wants to come down and take a picture with y'all in this community space. And then all of a sudden there was like a demand from like the Habitat for Humanity who supposedly owned the property. And I'm just like, but there's nothing that's happening there right now. And we have an opportunity to grow some food. So sometimes you got to force the hand because a lot could stay like for decades. And until you start doing something with this, that might draw the attention, but that also may also be a community organizing tool if you are able to transform that space into something that the community can use and can value. And so it might be going to the land commission, but it might just be us just organizing ourselves to solve a problem in our community.
Absolutely.
The whole rule. I definitely unite with that. I think that's something that my family comes from a historic area, Cleveland, and we've been really. I got a cousin that's just really taking a stance and leading on, developing from the inside. Like we can't keep waiting for the city of Cleveland or Garfield, whoever want to claim where that the area is, to do anything because the community was devastated after the crack epidemic, and so we're trying to change that. That's our area. That's where our ancestors are from.
And when we talk about like even environmental stuff, like we have to recognize that we had a program on a couple of days ago called the War on Drugs. Drugs was a huge environmental impact, right, in our community. Like
Absolutely.
it shifted everything. And I was just talking to the comrades in the chat about the fact that when the chairman says this, when we talk about the environment, that the shifting of people during the so-called trade in African people, the shifting of millions of people from one part of the world to the other, the transfer of human beings shifted the environment and changed it for forever. And it got the chairman was like, and I forgot he referenced the books and stuff that he was mentioning, but the sharks would follow the ships to get the bounty of people who are being taken off the ships and things like that. And so the environment of why was I mentioning this? I think we was talking about
it was a shift of the because I was talking about the crack epidemic and how that changed.
So that the shift of like human beings and the drugs and all of these things really changed the environment for all of us. Yeah. And then we were talking about chicken, and Comrade said Euro was like, he hooked on the chicken, the poison chicken. I ain't hooked on
Oh, that
chicken
was
now.
from they cloned Tyrone.
Oh,
It's something in
oh,
the chicken.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
it's
was.
definitely something that they make all that food highly addictive. I mean, like that's one of the major,
y'all addicted to chicken?
changes
I'm not
in.
addicted to chicken because let me tell you what I can do without chicken, but it's just easy and convenient, right? So I'm like I in this house I'm like I'm gonna make a meatless dish, and
Mhm.
they be like, mm. And I'm just like, let's make a meatless dish. And I'm just like, we don't need to eat chicken. I'm not hooked on it. I'm not the first one to line up at Popeyes for some seasoned, some spicy chicken. I ain't with it. I think we just have to have a diverse diet. We have to learn how to eat like human beings as opposed to like this,
Yeah, everything. I was talking to a young kid yesterday about just being black in a you know uh mass society. You're looked at as a monolithic view, like so I we have a very monolithic diet. I seen a post that was like, we eat all the animals. We have millions of animals, but we keep eating the same four animals. The cow, the chicken, the turkey, and the pig. We tend to eat those same. And then if someone else eats a different type of animal, we like, ugh. But really, that's if people eat based off their area. Like, if you go to Cuba, there the land is too small to really farm cows. So what happens, farm cows for meat. So what happens is most of the diet is either vegetarian or is going to include pigs, because pigs are typically
Oh,
wild
but
animals.
I think that's the part of it too. Is like really recognizing our environment and where we live. Because when we were, I forgot what I was talking about, but it was when we were talking when I did the PE on the two cradle theory. We were talking
Mhm.
about the northern cradle and the southern cradle, and the difference between like the southern cradle is that it has so many different diverse ecosystems, and because of those diverse ecosystems, that people had a diverse amount of food that they can grow food, they can hunt food, they can go to the forest and make food, and I think when you look at like African people, indigenous people for the most part, because there are indigenous people in the northern cradle, that the way that we eat was so much more diverse than just relying on the hunting of the bison, or not. They didn't have no bison in anywhere else but in North America, but like the hunting of whatever kind of meat that they would hunt for in Europe, right? You know what I'm saying? But like in the islands in Africa, like you get it from the forest. You're going to get from you're going to have that party for that one meat capture you get, and then you got something else. And I think when we talk about having a diverse diet, then we really have to look at where we are and how people ate, and that can solve so many different health issues that I'm experiencing right now, and that probably are the other people are experiencing too. Um, which I mean, all of it ties into like the question of colonial capitalism. Like if you're sick, oh man, it's just so it's so deep and like profound. Like everything ties into one another, and like you can say that you want to eat better. That doesn't change the price of tea in China, as they say.
Mhm.
You can say that you want to make a garden, but that, like, you know what I mean. So like in making ourselves better, and trying to improve our community, we also have to have that anti-colonial perspective and fight for the total transfer of power away from people who are oppressing us and killing us with all of these things to something that's more holistic. Oh, well, we are at time, and I want to thank all my comrades from the IEC for joining us. So, Comrade Coco Lewis, as always, is our MC, International Membership, Economic Development. Comrade Nicole Chung, who is our new International Secretary. Comrade Hadar Longi, who is the Director of the War Council. And Zaid, whenever she turns her camera on, is our international membership and recruitment coordinator. And of course, me, I'm the president of the African National Women's Organization. And we look forward to engaging with you on so many different levels throughout the rest of our year. And stay tuned for our next month's programming for African Women Must Lead. And the breakdown, we will have a guest, and we will let you know who that guest is at some point. But next month, and we'll see you there, especially you, Sayero. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we will see you all next month.